Hey everyone, thanks for stopping in, and today we're going to be talking about the new SAULT album called Chapter 1. So SAULT is a British music group that makes R&B, soul, funk, and even a little gospel-influenced music. Add some salt to your life. This isn't even real salt, it's toy salt I went and took from my son's toy bin. They're a prolific group because since 2019, that's the release of their first album, and since then they have released 13 albums in total, including an impressive 5 albums in 2022 alone. Now, while the group primarily consists of producer and songwriter Inflo, as well as singer and songwriter Cleo Sol, I think part of the reason why they're able to have such a high output in terms of their music is they frequently work with many different collaborators. But their most recent and 13th album was released earlier in January, and it's called Chapter 1. It's a relatively short album with 10 songs and only 36 minutes long, and the album cover is quite minimalist, where it's only a pencil with what looks like a flame on top where the eraser would be over a black background. The first track, called God Protect Me From My Enemies, has some very funky instrumentals. It's fast-paced and it's very uplifting, and it's got a groovy beat that feels very watery. This is also a very layered track, as they actually utilize a real orchestra for this, consisting of violins, violas, cellos, flutes, a harp, and organs, which they actually use the orchestra on many tracks throughout the entire album. This track also has an incredibly catchy synth and some very soulful singing from Cleo Sol. Next up, we have the title track, Chapter 1, with a very groovy and driving beat. And it has a nice funk instrumental where the fast-paced, syncopated drumming contrasts very nicely with the long and slow bass lines. Next, we have the track Fulfill Your Spirit, which is a lush, soulful track that yet again utilizes the orchestra. It creates a serene mood, and this is a very dynamic track with quiet, soothing guitar segments where other instruments and Cleo Sol's voice slowly join in, and it begins to crescendo and get very loud. And the track also has angelic vocals that beautifully complement the instrumentation. Moving on to the track Protector. Now, this might be my favorite track on the entire album. It's an incredible fusion of soul and funk. It feels very spiritual yet groovy, and it has such a catchy synth and guitar on it. Following that, we have the track Good Things Will Come After the Pressure. This track begins with a hypnotic bass line, and then the drums and guitar join in, quickly followed by Cleo's yet again angelic vocals. We get some nice psychedelic bits from the guitar just before the track crescendos into the chorus. It calms back down again after the chorus, but for the next chorus, it begins to ramp back up again, but even more grandiose as the orchestra joins in this time. Next, we have a very psychedelic track called Create Your Prophecy. This track honestly just makes me feel like I'm floating through space when I listen to it. A layered track with a lush and ethereal orchestra, and it's very uplifting with a soulful chorus. All right, took a brief detour from the video because it's snowing, and that's a big deal because I live in southeastern North Carolina and it doesn't ever snow here. But we're getting a lot of snow. It's nighttime, I don't know if you can really see, but we're getting a lot of snow. Oh, it's cold as shit out here. All right. Back to the album. Next, we have the track Love Does Not Equal Pain, which is lyrically quite a repetitive track, as the only lyrics on it are love does not equal pain, they're jealous of what's in your brain, and they hate to love you. But I do have to say it is very catchy when they are singing that. This is a groovy funk track with a driving instrumental, and it has these 2 slow psychedelic intermissions between the choruses that I really enjoy. And I also just wanted to note that the last minute or so of this track is incredibly trippy. I think it's really like the most sort of psychedelic they get on the entire album. Next, we have the track Lord Have Mercy, which is very slow, mellow, and relaxing. There's some beautiful vocalizing going on, and the orchestra harmonizes with Cleo Sol's vocals in a very satisfying way. Lyrically, it's a very minimal track. The entirety of the lyrics are, "You are free, forever, use your light and your heart, you are free. And that is the lyrics from start to finish of the entire track. But sonically, it's a little melancholic, it's a little psychedelic, and overall, I think it's a beautiful track. Next, we have the penultimate track, Don't Worry About What You Can't Control. I'm noticing a good bit of the song titles on this album are pretty long, but this is an uplifting, serene, and soulful track with a bouncy bass. It is yet another lyrically repetitive track, with the only lyrics throughout the entire song being, don't worry about what you can't control, let it go, sort of just repeated over and over. Moving on to the final track of the album called Puppet. This begins as a pulsing funk instrumental that gradually becomes more soulful as the piano and the synth come in, along with the vocals themselves getting more soulful. And I think it was just a really nice way to close out the album. Overall, I think this was a great album. It had an incredible fusion of soul and funk with heavy psychedelic elements. The inclusion of the orchestra on many of the tracks throughout the album made it feel very grandiose and epic in scale. I really enjoyed the production, where it had this great mix of not sounding too polished and overproduced, but it also didn't sound too amateur or poorly mixed. And I think the album flows nicely. There's no jarring transitions from track to track when you're listening to it. But those are my thoughts on the new SAULT album, Chapter 1. I definitely recommend you listen to it, check it out, give it a listen. It is a great album in my opinion. But that's it for this video. Thanks for sticking around. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.